Hoop Dreams. On the court in Bentonville, Mike Neighbors made a career choice that led him to the University of Arkansas's head coaching job. Constant collecting, Coach knows basketball success like he knows the sentimental value of things and shooting baskets. It wasn't just a trip down memory lane. We put Coach on the court. It's a special edition of Downtown Now, starting now. Welcome to Downtown Now. I am Aaron Nolan. My co-host Dana Schlagenhalf will join us in just a moment. Today is a very unique day here in Bentonville as we focus on how this city shaped a man into a coach he didn't know he was destined to be. It was 1994 when Greenwood, Arkansas native Mike Neighbors took the girls basketball head coaching job at Bentonville High School. He would see quick success. In 1997, his Lady Tigers finished second in the state. Fast forward to 2017, after moving to the college ranks, Coach Neighbors snagged his dream job at the University of Arkansas. And last season, as the women's head coach, Neighbors won his 200th career game as a college basketball coach. And Coach has a great team coming back for this season. There is so much more to Coach than just being on the sidelines at a basketball game. Dana joins us now with our downtown conversation.
Welcome, though, to what we're going to call the OG Bentonville High School.
This is the OG right here. There's a lot of fond memories in this building.
This is now Lincoln Junior High School, but when you coached, this was the floor you coached on.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool to be back.
Very cool. It's a little different, but I think I'm looking at it like it used to be.
Yes.
I mean, it's got new coat, new paint, new paint, new shrubs, but it's the same place we used to do all of our drills, and I'm anxious to see the office, but I think I'm looking at it and seeing probably something different than you are. So, yeah, this has changed quite a bit.
This was your office?
It did not look like this. There were 4 desks in here.
Okay. Who'd you share with?
Well, my very first day in here, it was Boyd Shelton there and Scotty Nolan right here. And then when they left, I was the only coach here for the summer, so I took over the good spot. I put my desk right here.
Welcome to Coach Neighbors' office.
This was it.
Summer.
Yeah, it's like right here. I had it. So the new boys coach came in and goes, "Where do I go?" I go, "I don't care. Over there, I guess."
You got to Bentonville High School and ended up in a role that you never really planned for, that set the trajectory for everything after that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I missed a meeting because I didn't have an email yet set up, so I didn't know to show up for the coaches meeting that starts the beginning of the year. And when I came in, I found out I was the swim coach.
Do you swim?
No, not a lick. I mean, I can dog paddle, and I'm not going to sink, but I don't know any of the strokes. The first swim meet I ever saw, I coached, but it was kind of nobody on the staff wanted to do it because you had to be up at 4:30 in the morning every day, and they're, as you know, the most dedicated athletes, and I learned so much from them. It was the best thing ever happened to me, but it was not the start that I had, in my head. But yeah, it started that trajectory off on the right plane.
How did you become the girls basketball coach here?
Nobody wanted the job. Had a legendary coach in Scotty Nolan. When I was here, I did my student teaching with him and Boyd Shelton. And Scotty retired mid-year, so the job was open. I still remember them interviewing lots of local coaches, some from Texas, some from Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and probably 6 or 7 different people interviewed for it. And finally, Mr. White, the principal at the time, Jim White, and the athletic director, Gary Orr, came down, knocked on my door and said, "You're going to be the new girls coach." And I said, I don't think so. I've never coached girls basketball and don't want to. And they said, "Well, okay. Well, we thought you might want to do that, but it's been good knowing you. Good luck finding you a job next year." And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, "Well, that's your job if you want it. If not, then good luck." And I said, "I'll take it." So I was First day of practice, I knew, again, right place, right time, right circumstances. Those two guys, and Mr. White and Coach Order, knew I could do it. I didn't know at the time, but from the second I stepped right outside that locker room right there and got that team together, I knew I was supposed to coach women's basketball.
There was something I read, a moment where one of your players, Martha Hancock, pulled you aside and asked you early on in your career why you didn't treat the girls as tough as the boys had been treated. Tell me how that changed everything in your approach as a coach.
She was a sophomore point guard on our team that won one game. And everybody in my world was telling me, when you coach girls, you have to do this. You have to treat them different. You have to make sure you have a meeting and where everybody can see you. Don't close your blinds. Don't ever put your arm between the elbow and the shoulder. Don't ever put your arm around them. Don't ever. And it was all these old school people that they weren't ready for it. And I wasn't either. So I was listening to all my mentors. And yeah, Martha put it to me pretty plainly and clearly that if I was going to get to coach her, I needed to coach her like I had been coaching the boys team the year before, because I was the JV boys coach. Mm-hmm. My first team here basketball was a JV boys team, and I think the girls had seen the way I coached them, and it was probably a legitimate question. Why aren't you coaching me the same way you were coaching them? And I just didn't have the knowledge at that point in time where I'd been raised and how I was raised. That was what I was supposed to be doing. But it was Martha. She was probably 15 at the time. Some of the wisest advice I ever got. So I still thank her for it to this day. She comes to some of our games now with her family, but that was her.
1-24.
Yeah.
Started 1-24.
Yeah.
And in '97, you guys went to the state championship game.
We did.
That's a pretty good team. You said it's one of the best teams you've ever coached.
It was the closest knit team, the best, that got the most out of their ability, that achieved everything they could have. Obviously, it would have ended a great story if we could have somehow won that last game and wrapped it up with a championship. But I still remember the locker room talk about, how far we had come. You look back on that team now and you appreciate it even more for what it was than probably that we did at the time.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
And I don't want to make it seem like these two things are correlated.
Okay.
But you left Bentonville High School.
Yeah.
Not long after that, you had a heart attack at 29.
I did.
Tell me about how that happened and how that changed your life as well.
Yeah, so an opportunity came to leave to go to Cabot and just coach basketball again. It was a stressful move. I don't think, like you said, I don't think any of these things were correlated, but yeah, that February I was just laying on the couch and at 29 couldn't figure out why my chest was hurting. We'd had Polish sausage for breakfast, so I thought I was having heartburn just like everybody, just like the EMTs did when they got there.
Right, because you're 29.
29, I was in a lot better shape than I am now, and it was the best shape of my life. We had just had an open gym, and I'd gone beating a 17-year-old senior off the bounce on the baseline and dunked it over him. So it was the peak of my career. Yep. That was highlight reel for me, and shut the gym down, and we were headed home, and when I got home, that's when it hit. And you start talking about how it changed you. Shortly after that was when I said, I've got to do college. I mean, if life is really this short, like everybody tells me it is, then I've got to stop talking about wanting to be in college coach and going and doing something about it. So that was the moment when I said, whatever it takes to be in a college setting, I was willing to do.
You knew the job you ultimately wanted, and we'll get to that point. But I want to talk about one specific moment that I saw online, and it was on March 29th, 2010.
Okay.
Stanford Xavier, 20 seconds left, tied game.
Yeah, my birthday.
You're an assistant coach, and at that point you're already standing, getting ready to celebrate. You have a player open, and she misses 2 wide open layups.
Yep, I just got goosebumps.
There's a video online, and we're going to show it, of you pulling her off the floor.
Jernigan is inconsolable.
Oh, bless her heart.
You said later on, that was the moment I knew I was supposed to be a coach. I'll tell you, that is an emotional, if you watch it, it breaks your heart.
It does.
And you see you as a coach there to pick her up.
Yeah.
How was that? Tell me about that moment.
Yeah, I got goosebumps. You told the story great. Maybe as good as Steve Scott does, or not Steve Scott, but Stuart Scott, the replay, I watched it probably a couple times a week. You're talking about Dee Jernigan's layups at Xavier. It was instinct. Like, I still to this day, because everybody would say, well, how did you know to run out there and get, what made you do that when everybody else was in shock or whatever? I don't know. It was all the years of my papa raising me the way he did, or other coaches telling me be there when the kids need you the most, they don't need you when, and it just was immediate, go protect Dee Dee, because you knew she wanted to make those shots worse than anybody. And then for us to turn around and lose the game in the next 4.4 seconds, we're still tied, and we could not get our huddle. And you go back and if you watch it from the lens I would look at it, I've watched that. I think the video on YouTube has over 1 million views. I think I'm 500,000 of it. I've picked out so many. I've watched everybody's reaction, and I found out Sabrina Ionescu was the ball girl. But I still to this day don't know. My first instinct was to go get the kid. And I don't know that I did a good enough job after the fact protecting her as I did that in that split second, because it was hard. That was to go to the Final Four, underdog, Cinderella story, whatever, however you want to put it in, into perspective. But that was the moment that I knew I was ready to be a head coach too. Like it wasn't just being a coach and period. It's time for me to start thinking like a head coach and do this for more kids. Be there when they need you. They don't need you when they hit the game-winning shot. You can go back and look at the video when we won at Washington, go to the Final Four. I walked straight off the floor right to the locker room. You can't find another picture of me as they're celebrating until they got me out of the locker room to cut the net down. But they don't need you then. They need you when the bad stuff happens. And for every lens and filter that I run things through, that's what I try to make sure I'm there for them when those moments hit. But yeah, that was a pretty defining moment. I still get people talk about it like, hey, weren't you the guy that ran out there? And I had a lot more hair and we were wearing suits back in the day still, but everybody, and then a lot of other people will say, well, what would have happened if she would have made the shot? Do you think your career would have been different? And I think we all know you can't think like that, but who knows? I don't know if it would have sunk in that I was ready to do all that quite as fast.
It's a reaction that's good to be known for. It's a
yeah,
terrible moment.
Terrible moment, but outcome versus result, all that stuff we talk about, you'll take the result.
I'm going to jump way ahead now.
Way ahead.
You hear the hog call.
Oh, yeah.
You grew up a Razorback fan like many of us, went to the U of A, had many stints at the University of Arkansas, but you're a diehard Razorback fan. What's it like to hear it from the perspective as the head coach?
Different. It hits you different. Especially a spontaneous one. I don't like the ones where the announcer has to say, let's stand up and call those hogs. I'm dead against those. I've been on public. I'm on record as saying I like those ones when the crowd just starts it. And the one I remember most was the press conference when some of my friends on the front row started it. It was spontaneous. And then when we beat UConn a few years ago, it was during the COVID year, so there was only 4,400 people in the gym. That was the max. It was a sellout for what we could max out. But that spontaneous hog call during that last couple minutes of the game when it got tight again, it hits you a little different.
Final question, because we're getting, I guess class is ending soon.
Okay.
What's next?
More hog calls.
Yep, hopefully.
Hopefully more good hog calls. I want to be the first Razorback basketball coach to get to retire. It's a hard job. When you take a job in the SEC, very rarely do you get to leave on your own terms. It's not happened in basketball. So I kind of want to be that, to where they have to name part of the building after you. You don't get a part of the building named after you until you've accomplished something. Right. So I think I've got up to supply closet. I started out maybe, the washroom or someplace, or where we store the uniforms, equipment room. But, I want some part of that building. I want us to have done enough to leave a legacy there that is worthy of having something else, carry on, some impact on the future. I've got a young family. I've got just turned 3 and about to turn 2, as well as my 26 and my 22-year-old. Something that when I'm gone, they'll be able to say, hey, that's my dad. Yeah.
That's pretty special. Well, thank you for joining us, the place where it all began.
It's great. Thank you.
I think we're going to play a round of horse.
Let's go.
So we'll be back in a little bit.
All right.
So now I'm about to beat Coach Neighbors at his own game. Let's play some DWTN. Rules are the same as horse. Coach, you're up first.
Did I hear you say beat me or play me?
I did.
You said beat. All right. Yeah, we're starting really simple. You can't make that when you're in trouble.
Did I get the D already?
Nothing bad.
Maybe I should let it start.
You're
Feeling it now.
the coup de grace puts you outside. I get this big clip on people. Make. You win. Fair enough.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you. All right, we'll be right back on Downtown Now.
The sun is 93 million miles away. The least we can do is give it a warm welcome each morning.
Welcome back to Downtown Now. We've already talked about Coach Neighbors being, well, a good coach, and he's a cool person. But we've also got to point something out. He's a heck of a, I got to say it, Coach, I'm sorry. He's a heck of a hoarder.
You want me to take it? Come on.
Take a look around Coach Mike Neighbors' home, and you'll quickly realize, in the midst of raising 2 toddlers, this guy likes things.
2, 3.
From Razorback things, to Star Wars things, to basketball things, to baseball things, to video game things, to music things. Are you a hoarder?
No. In fact, I got a sign in here that exactly tells you, well, I'll show it to you. It says, it's not hoarding if your stuff's cool. Hoarders, have you watched, everybody's like, you're a hoarder. Have you watched those shows? Those have newspapers and empty pork and bean cans and things. This is collecting.
This collection spills over several rooms. In the music room, Coach tells us he learned to play the guitar after a missed opportunity with a girl.
Was on a date and girlfriend thought the guy in the band was a good guitarist and hot. I didn't think he was either. But she ended up dating him instead of me. I'm gonna lose lots of girls over the years, but it's not gonna be because I can't play a guitar.
Then back downstairs in the Arkansas room and his beloved Razorbacks.
That's Ballantyne, Thurman, and U.S. Reed.
Rooms and rooms full of his collections. It began early for Coach Neighbors, simply out of necessity.
Anybody that was in elementary school in the 80s had these. There was a big age gap between me and my older brother, about 7 years, so I had to just play by myself a lot. So it became baseball cards, it became Star Wars figures, that became a collecting thing, and it's just kind of morphed. The baseball helmets started coming out in the early 80s. We turned those into, have to have them for wiffle ball, but it initially started just revolving around having to make up games and play in the neighborhood and entertain ourselves, because all of our parents worked. We were all latchkey kids, and they left work at 6 and came home at 5.
Now, there's no question that many of these could be sold for a big profit. The wall of Michael Jordan magazines or original figures are proof. But for Coach, it's more about the sentimental value.
Everything's got a memory attached to it. It's got probably very little eBay value. I always laugh about it. People are like, how much is that worth? I said, to me, it's priceless. My wife, JC, was a reluctant collector. She couldn't believe it. Like at first, she was like, this is creepy. But I think what she finally realized being around it was more attached to the memories, that not the stuff. Got every business card from everywhere I've ever worked. It starts with Blockbuster Video. That was the first business card I ever had. I was the general manager at Blockbuster Video. And that's the why. If you really want to drill this down to the why, it is so that when you walk by it, you get that memory.
Hundreds, actually more like thousands of items, each with a special place in a coach's heart.
What do your players say when they come over?
They call it the museum.
And now I will never forget, this is actually called collecting.
It's not hoarding, though. I can win that argument. It's not hoarding.
All right, before we go, we want to prove something to you. In fact, this is Dana's favorite game, a game of Did You Know? This is Bentonville sports prowess. Check this out and see just how successful Bentonville high schools have been. Bentonville High School has won over 180 state titles. That's pretty impressive. The high school has been named Max Prep's #1 athletic program in the nation, 2013 to 14 and 14 to 15. That's really high accomplishments. Now, less than 10 years ago, a second high school started in Bentonville. It's out west, it's the Wolverines. In that short time, Bentonville West has snagged 4 state titles. I think it's safe to call our city Title Town. Bentonville, no doubt, is now Title Town. A very special thanks goes out to Mike Neighbors, who endured all of our questions. He was a great champ being here on Downtown Now. We always like to thank our sponsors, Community Coffee and Cameron Smith and Associates. We could not do it without you guys. For Dana Schlegenhaft, I am Aaron Nolan. We'll see you next time on Downtown Now.
The sun is 93 million miles away. The least we can do is give it a warm welcome each morning.